You gotta help me stop this thing before it gets loose.
It's too late.
Welcome back to our final episode of covering Alien Resurrection. If you haven't seen the last episode, we suggest you do that. Otherwise, let's continue. The interactions between Cull and Ripley are dialogue perfection in my book. Sigourney's body language is just magnificent. She seems not only seductive but menacing, and she conveys alien-like movements. This is one of my favorite parts of the movie. Of course, it would be a part with dialogue rather than action. When Jeunet takes the soldier's weapon behind him, it is very embarrassing. Are these security guards who never held weapons before? When Christie brings out his concealed weapons, there is a soldier standing a few feet behind him and would have a clear view to see these weapons. We can argue he's focusing on Jeunet, but the truth is, when Elgin specifically calls to Christie and looks at him, the soldier would have to be stupid not to look in his direction, or at least glance, which he proves to be stupid. He also does not respond when Christie fires his weapons. Honestly, better positioning of these actors was needed for this shot to work the way they wanted it to. When the gunfire erupts, it's great that not a single USM Auriga soldier fires their weapons, especially when they had plenty of time to do so. The dudes on the top of the steps just stand there. If you watch it closely, they don't even have their guns raised before half of them are dead. And they had clear line of sight to get some good shots off for several seconds. It would have been nice if these soldiers were taken seriously at all. Moving on. The bouncing bullet from Christie's gun in the gym was an unused idea from a previous Jean-Pierre film, and it's yet another artistic choice without thought of reality. Unless you're a true believer in the Warren Commission report, I don't know how this is believable. What's worse is how stressed this soldier is. He would have surely pulled the trigger out of instinct at the back of Christie's head the moment he heard a fart, much alone a gunshot. And don't you dare say, but he's a trained soldier. He wouldn't fire unless he was sure who fired. All evidence to this timestamp is to the contrary of that belief. Now, when the aliens turn on their smaller forming alien, the book goes right into the aliens' thought process, and their actions were triggered by the memory of Ripley saying,
"I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a goddamn percentage."
All right, we waste him.
So they act on that. When they turn on the weaker creature, the weak one actually agrees with their actions, knowing that it is dying for their queen. However, the alien squealing and whining like an innocent victim just diminishes the terror of these creatures. I also have to be harsh on the lighting and directing of these creatures. They are so covered in slime you can't make out any of their features, and they're barely lit. Let's look at all the aliens. Which one looks worse? Give your opinion in the comment. Mine is the 1997 version. Anyways, the intestines melting through the floor was actually a platform that was lowered to make it look like it was melting through the floor. It was quite ingenious. I find these aliens very interesting after researching all the film material for this film. To be honest, I hate the alien designs because they look more animalistic, brownish. Their domes are awkwardly long. There is a third leg joint that looks kind of doofy. They are less biomechanical, and they are now KY jelly factory faucets, to the point that Rupert would feel at home. Despite all those issues, I can accept it, all of it, because these are unlike any aliens we saw before. Even their hive is off. Rather than look like a steely, hard secreted resin that we saw in Alien and Aliens, their hive is more like a collection of body pieces thrown against the wall that isn't sticking. It is analogous to the creatures themselves. It's as if these creatures are unfinished and lacking their true nature. It's a pretty interesting concept. As for the creatures' psychology, they do have human traits. They are half human, half alien clones. They are confused as to who their true queen is. Instead of going right for the queen when they escape, they go for Ripley first, who is the true mother of their queen.
Not mother?
No, Ruprecht. She's not our mother.
They also use human-like tactics, which we will see when we get to the underwater scene. They are nothing like the first Alien in 1979. And the beasts in Alien Resurrection are a fascinating concept to study. The trade-off for having human traits is that they are less scary. The novel for the film goes way more into detail into these concepts, but to move along, I will just single out this specific alien to push my point. The alien that takes Goldmine wanted revenge on the scientists, and while the other creatures secure the ship and free their queen and fellows, this alien hangs around, waiting to get payback on Goldmine selfishly, which is a very human thing to do. I know there are some out there that will be bullish and say that's not in the film, but the truth is many of these traits are shown in this film, and it's clear as day. We see aliens vulnerable throughout the film. One is weak and whining, as I just discussed. The queen is lovey-dovey. At the end of the film, this alien is lost and looking for its queen, which is verified in the novel. You can yell as loud as you want around them and it doesn't draw them to you. You can run past their nest area and they won't come calling, even though there's many right underneath your feet. These are not scary predators at all. Still, these aliens work considering what they are, and I like that they made that attempt in this movie. Now, the man inspecting the dead alien pen is not a soldier, rather his name is Dr. Claus. In the novel, he arrived on the scene to see several soldiers unconscious, as they were stung by the alien's tail, hearkening back to James Cameron's concept in Aliens. Claus then removed his coat and took a gun from one of the soldiers, and then bit the icicle. Do you get the joke? Because the character's name is Claus, as in North Pole, cold, and then he's frozen? Yeah, it's another Jeunet joke. When he enters the confined space, he is looking at nothing, as there is nothing to see. There's a dead body in a hole in the floor in a confined space. What is he achieving here? Well, the moment only exists so the alien could use its inner jaws instead of its hand to get revenge on those pesky humans. Was the alien just sitting in the room waiting for some dumb person to go into the pen like a moron so it could exact revenge on those meanies just like a spiteful human would do? That's yes on all counts. Ripley laughing or smiling in her cell is really a nice touch. You don't know what to think of her at this point. Is she human? Is she for the aliens? You really can't tell up to this point. And like all the other films, Ripley is the force behind the movie. The new death for Perez has him inspecting his brain, and the scene is really another dumb schlocky B-movie moment, unworthy of the Alien franchise. We are supposed to be taking the situation and creatures seriously, and this achieves the opposite. Fox, like me, didn't like this idea, and they thought it was too comedic. Jean-Pierre Jeunet crusaded for this scene to stay in, and rather than argue, they tested the scene with a Las Vegas screening audience. More people were for the scene than against it, so I guess Fox and myself are wrong about the tone of this moment. Oddly enough, Hidea's death scene was to be longer, and he would humorously faint after a bit. Thankfully, Sigourney didn't like the longer brain scene, and lo and behold, it's not in any version of the film. Not surprisingly, Jean-Pierre says this is one of his favorite scenes in the film. Bottom line for me, being gory and graphic does little to impress me. There are plenty of B-horror films I can go to for that. Now, the aliens trying to get to Ripley is one of their first actions. She is their queen because the alien queen came from her, and of course, later, the newborn chooses her. The film makes it clear she can hear them and sense the creatures, and Ripley 8 is torn because she has all these terrible memories of these creatures, and yet she is a part of them. So, instinctually, she runs for it like the original Ripley would. Then she goes right for the panel to the alternate door in her room.
Excuse me.
Why are there 2 exits in a jail cell that is under guard for this very dangerous specimen? Anyways, I hate that Elgin is dumb here. Whedon's version of Elgin is infinitely better than this B-movie trope of a dummy leaving his group and endangering them all. He's supposed to be an experienced, hardened mercenary. Leaving the rear of his team would be the last thing he would do, especially in this dangerous situation. It really diminished Michael Wincott's character. I constantly get a sense that everyone is not affected by the dangerous environments they are in this movie. Do you remember how tense and foreboding it was in Alien just to go into another room on that ship and you didn't know where the alien was? Aliens and Alien 3 continued that dread. But in this film, it's non-existent. It's almost like the writer wrote Marvel films where the superheroes are always wisecracking in the face of danger. Maybe it has something to do with the genetic crossroads of Joss Whedon's script process. Get it? See what I did there? Okay, I do one joke every year, so you've got plenty of time to recover from this one. Another question I have to ask is, why the hell is everyone screaming at the top of their voices? Again, we go back to the fact that this crew is supposed to be trained mercenaries. How have they lived so long while having no inner volume control? Why the hell aren't the aliens drawn to their noise? Of course, they explain the aliens are somewhere else and Ripley can sense the creatures like a radar. However, this still does not dismiss the fact that in a situation of duress, this group should have operational awareness, and yet they don't deploy it. Moving on. When Vries shows up in the elevator, his original line was, "Who are you expecting? The Easter Bunny?" Dominique's English was not perfect, and he kept saying Eastern Bunny, causing everyone to laugh. Thus, the line was changed to Santa Claus. The clone scene was the confessed sequence Sigourney Weaver signed on to the project for, and she is brilliant. The scene is also perfectly filmed with no flaws. It is a chamber of horrors, and her reaction is a reaction that anyone could understand. And, as always, Sigourney just proves how good of an actress she is. Ripley 7 is a testament to the disgusting nature of Wren and the crew of the Auriga who knows about her existence. When we discover Ripley 7, you can see she's had surgery with little care and hasn't even been sewn back up. It's truly barbaric. According to the book and early scripts, she has inner jaws. Her voice suggests that something in her mouth is making it hard for her to speak. Every time I've tried to watch this, I've looked to see for these inner jaws, but to date I still can't see them. Perhaps they're behind her tongue. When you think about Ripley 7's terrible life since the Nostromo, it's just heartbreaking. And when she dies, it's a relief. My only question about this is, did Gedimind know about this? He is so caring and attentive to his creations. Would he have taken part in Seven's treatment? If he did, it's a harsh contradiction to his character setup. But I'm going to give the filmmakers benefit of the doubt and say Gedimind did not know, because I'm tired of pointing out narrative contradictions in this film. But more is coming. This brings us to Distephano. He tried to sway Ripley from going into this room by saying, "Not that way!" Now, I always thought, besides a soldier zapping Ripley, Distephano was the only hope for a true performance of a competent soldier on the Auriga. He shows he has morality when everyone is threatening Wren. He puts his own life on the line by trying to prevent such a murder. The thing about Alien Resurrection is that the human characters that get more than a minute of screen time are all bad people one way or the other, just like most of the characters in Alien 3. There is no good guy to root for beyond Ripley, and everyone is in it for themselves to escape to the Betty. At least in Alien 3, the prisoners gave their lives trying to stop the alien from falling in the wrong hands, and despite their crimes, they tried for redemption. In this film, there is no redemption, only escape. So for those who loathe Alien 3 because it's about prisoners, I have to ask, which film is really more cynical? No matter what you decide, there is no wrong answer, because it's about your tastes. It doesn't have to be about my taste. I had hoped that Distephano would be that avatar where there would be someone to root for. This soured in no time when Distephano has hero worship for the pirates just before entering the water, when they talked about weapons, and then later he had zero sympathy for Call's situation and went on and on. By the end of the film, Distephano chooses the mercenaries over Ren, which I can get behind. Once again, the contradictions take over because you thought he was a soldier, but instead he walks into a room seemingly alert but doesn't look ahead or to the left to see a giant creature. Instead, the newborn seemingly teleports to him and kills him. The filmmakers simply wanted to kill the character for a death scene, and logic be damned, which seems to be Jeunet's approach to everything in this film. I try to imagine the saving grace for Distephano is that he didn't fire at the creature because he was worried about breaching the ship and killing everyone on it. But this is based on nothing but my own desire to have someone to root for in this film. Sure, I can root for Ripley, but we know she's going to survive. It's a given. So back to the scene where Ripley enters the clone room, I ask, do you think he knows what's in that room, and that is why he is telling her not that way? Or is he just a guy assigned to this ship and trying to get out? How about you shout out your thoughts in the comments, as I never made up my mind on this one. This is why I'm always on the fence for this character, because I always wanted to like him, but in the end, I've always been mid in my opinion of him. The filmmakers repeat ignoring character depth with Larry Purvis, like they did with Distephano. Purvis is actually a true innocent. The character apparently has gone through a divorce and is now starting his life to work at a nickel refinery on Zerum. He wakes to find he's been kidnapped and used as a host and is going to die. The film should be trying to generate care and sympathy for this character, but by the end of the film, he is calling Call a toaster without conscience.
Great. She's a toaster oven. Can we leave now?
And the irony is, she was the main voice who championed trying to help him. Oddly enough, Call came to the ship to stop the aliens from spreading, and now she is willing to put one of the creatures on ice in the Betty to save Purvis to live another day. So like most characters in this film, Purvis becomes just another callous contradiction who is in the film to be fodder for an intended scene to visually impress the audience. In earlier scripts, Purvis would do things to help the crew survive, like saving Jeuner's life, but now he is relegated for just another death scene. Yet again, I have to go back to praising after shunning some of the things in this film, because Ripley's delivery about being a mother to these monsters is just wonderful. She is such a cold character in this film. It's hard to even see her as a heroine because she seems not to care. I love what she's doing here, though, regardless. Now, many cite the underwater scene as one of the big moments for this film, and I like it like everyone else. But what I like most about it is this.
Must be the cooling tanks. Somebody must have opened the valves.
The nasties couldn't have done this, could they?
Yes, they could, and yes, they did. The aliens opened the valves of the cooling tanks to create a bottleneck to kill anyone trying to use escape routes on the ship. They also physically transported eggs from the hive to the end of that route if anyone got past the two warriors guarding the area. The trap is perfect. However, This wonderful concept is destroyed when Call falls into the water and magically appears behind the locked door, thus bypassing the trapped area with no problem.
Barely an inconvenience. Oh, really?
What were they thinking when they did this? It totally undermines the entire water scene that Call does this. I often wonder if the director, editor, and general filmmakers are thinking about continuity and consistency at all in this film, and I keep coming up with the same answer.
No, not really, no.
Then there's Hillard's death. All we know about her is she's a pilot, she moans really loud when her feet are rubbed, and she won't leave anybody behind. But the camera does a close-up on her to telegraph loudly that she is next, and we're supposed to care. The director gave no time for this character, so she can be nothing more or less than B-movie fodder. The only death I actually cared about was Christy, who had some moments of friendship with Jeunet shine through, and who went through a lot for Vrisa's sake. In the end, his death is the only one that is done to help other humans. It is selfless. Though Jeunet killed the alien, he nor Distephano double-timed it to aid Vries in his struggles with the latter. Jeunet even watches the struggle and does nothing. Don't forget, this is a 3-sided ladder, so there would be no obstruction to get to Vries. Everybody just watches, and then Christy dies, and you have to question whether Jeunet and Christy were really friends. Do you remember in Alien 3 when Dylan, the murderer and rapist, said this?
Come on, we gotta find the sprinklers! Come on, we gotta help these guys!
And then this rapist helped his friend and actually had remorse and then sacrificed his life for everyone else? And yet, in this movie, we get this.
Well, I say if we want to make it a decent time, I say we ditch the cripple.
Moving on. Now, a twisted irony is that the crew of the Betty is immoral enough to kidnap innocent people and sell them to others. What's peculiar about this is that Call is among them and would no doubt fetch a fortune if sold or offered to authorities, and the crew never knew it. There is a small gaffe if you pay close attention when the Betty doors open. One of the doors they used led to Ripley's cloning tube. Though it is unlit, you can clearly see this is a dead end that doesn't lead anywhere. This occurred because they had no more money in the budget and had to use what they had. As for the Viper Pit, the concept was supposed to be a bunch of aliens moving about and Ripley would sink into the masses. After the constant changes and additions by the filmmakers, the sets had to be adjusted, and the best that could be done was to create a pulsating landscape, which is completely contrary to past Hive appearances. Like the dumb living eggs, it turned something that was creepy and iconic already into something cheaper that contradicted the world building already in place. You can argue that the eggs look cooler this way, and I myself argue that the Viper Pit and eggs are due to the fact that these aliens are different from other xenomorphs because they are clones. As a result, their whole ecosystem is different. Yet that is just a fan trying to justify changes that are not necessary. Canon is important for franchises, and that is why Star Trek and Star Wars is in the dumpster today. Some can argue the same for the Alien franchise. I am arguing that Alien Resurrection is ignoring established canon for eye candy and fast action, and it is the death of consistency and quality. In defense of all this, I want to point out that Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff Jr.'s team did the best they could with these concepts. They did everything they were told to do, and I think if any other effects house had to do this project, the film would have fallen more into B territory. Oddly enough, Sigourney Weaver was adamant that the Viper Pit be in the movie, and told Fox that if they tried to cut it in any way, she would do no promotions for the film. Of course, she got her way. The original design for the newborn's head was the best, and making it look more human was just grotesque. The newborn was not scary. It was just awkward. I shouldn't feel sympathetic towards an alien looking into its eyes. I'm sure if I saw the newborn in real life, I'd shat myself while running and screaming hysterically, but I would be frozen in terror if I saw this instead. There's a huge difference. When filming the scene with the newborn, Ripley avoids the newborn's eyes, and this was done on purpose by Sigourney without any direction. When she was working on Gorillas in the Mist, she learned never to make eye contact when initially meeting a potentially dangerous animal. So she applied it to this scene. A scene I do appreciate is that the newborn copies its mother's or grandmother's movements without ever seeing them. Thus, it creates a narrative of familiar bonds that works. You want to hear something gross? Ripley is making out with her son or grandson here. The question I have here is Clemens his father or grandfather? Yeah, you heard what I said. Think about it. Like the beginning of the film, I prefer the ending of the theatrical cut. The ruins of Paris in the special edition and the ship landing does nothing for me, except to say that Paris is in ruins. That's not to say it's a disaster everywhere on Earth, but the bottom line is, the film shows you ruins, and it is visually contrary to something one would want to protect. I preferred the ambiguous end, where we see nothing but skies, leaving us to wonder what Earth is like for the next film that would never happen. Immediately after the film was released, Whedon began writing a draft for Alien 5 that would take place on Earth, but Weaver said she wanted the next story to take place on LV-426, and heaven forbid Sigourney not have creative direction of another Alien movie, so Fox stalled and Whedon abandoned the project. Now, if you made it this far in my video, and you've seen my earlier videos, you know the Alien series means a lot to me. At the time when this film came out, I had been off the streets for 2 years in Toledo, Ohio, and was working as a landscaper at the Covenant House in Toledo, Ohio, while rebuilding my life. I was overjoyed that another Alien movie was coming out, and I was drooling just as bad as the Xenomorphs to see this film. When I saw the film initially, I dug a lot of the concepts in it. But that's the thing about this movie. The concepts and the execution doesn't completely mesh. Alien Resurrection is a film I would describe as having multiple personality disorder. One minute it sets up an idea and the next it laughs awkwardly. Sometimes it shows horror and the characters ignore the danger they're in. It's all over the map, and this is because I believe Jean-Pierre Jeunet was the wrong director for this project. He had no emotional investment in the Alien franchise. In fact, he didn't want the job. And when he got the job, he is on record stating he would treat it like a commercial. He tweaked artistic ideas that clashed, but it didn't matter because the visuals were the goal, not the story. His quotes give this away. I was a bit concerned to watch my film. Maybe I won't like it. No, it was great. I have a lot of shots that I love. For the people who don't like it, I can say, fuck you. Usually, when talking about past films, directors note themes and ideas, but Jeunet constantly refers to the humor, visual style, and weirdness of his film. I think it's kind of sexy and weird. They almost make love. It was very disturbing to American people. You know how they are Puritans. Jeunet has no qualms literally taunting American audiences after mocking them throughout the movie. And I'm all for that, in a satire, not an Alien movie. Now, Joss Whedon made a stink about Jeunet's contribution to the film over the years, and it can be summed up in this quote. It was mostly a matter of doing everything wrong. They said the lines, mostly, but said them all wrong, and they cast it wrong, and they designed it wrong, and they scored it wrong. They did everything wrong that they could possibly do. It wasn't so much that they changed the script, it's that they just executed it in such a ghastly fashion as to render it almost unwatchable. Now, I'm not a big follower of Whedon, but I will say I definitely don't agree that the casting was wrong, and I don't think the score was terrible. However, his quote makes it clear he had a problem with Jeunet, and other quotes he made in the past claims Jeunet sabotaged his script. And how did Jeunet respond to this take? Well, he did what he did in Alien Resurrection. He mocked Whedon, and then took it further and mocked a group of people who are actually fans of the Alien franchise too. I know Joss Whedon said some bad things about me. I don't care. I know if Joss Whedon had made the film himself, it probably would have been a big success. He's very good at making films for American geeks. Something for morons. Take that, Marvel fans. I have no problem in being devil's advocate here and say that we saw what Alien Resurrection would have been like if Whedon directed it. Firefly and Serenity were very entertaining. It had Whedon cheekiness, but it took itself seriously. It had engaging characters and a satisfying story arc that paralleled the Alien Resurrection script in many ways, and it stood the test of time. Those that like that series must be morons too, right, Jeunet? We know today that if creators have outright contempt or want to mock a population of people, whether large or small, it never helps entertainment, and Alien Resurrection is just another example of that. The overall tone of the first 3 Alien films was body horror, dread, and fear. Alien Resurrection's tone was body horror, sarcasm, and dark comedy. Even in the face of this criticism, Jeunet would later laugh while he said this: "The American people hate it." In the end, I see Alien Resurrection as a Jean-Pierre Jeunet film, but not necessarily an Alien film. And I do think Jeunet is a brilliant director because of Amelie, and City of Lost Children is very unique. However, Alien Resurrection is a what-if in my mind. Every few years I watch Alien Resurrection, and it's great with a bowl of popcorn, and it semi-entertains me. However, I have zero fear of the aliens, and the newborn is just odd. I prefer the original blood-sucking newborn from the first draft screenplay, minus the dumb bat wings. It was more alien, more foreign, and way more threatening than the petulant, psychologically unstable newborn we got. But again, that was just another hokey Jeunet desire. Jeunet altered the film to be silly, and trying to tell a dark children's tale is totally contrary to what Alien is. I suggest that if a director was hired who took the screenplay for this film seriously and tweaked it rather than weakening it to put slants on the narrative, we might have had an amazing 4th installment that would have rivaled some of the preceding Alien films. This is why I say he was completely wrong to direct this film. This film could have pushed the envelope and been so much more. In the end, this quote sums it all up for me. When I saw it on DVD, at the end, I understood the story. I thought, oh, it's pretty good. A director who does not even understand his own story until 6 years after the fact is not the right director for said film. Today I have a love-hate relationship with Alien Resurrection. If I'm talking to a passionate Alien fan, I would say temper your expectations, and if you want the horror of the first 3 films, be warned. If you just enjoy zoo animals getting free and killing people, get a bowl of popcorn and enjoy, which I can easily do with this film. There's a lot of good things in this movie, but as I've laid out, it's a mess, and the film constantly contradicts itself, not only in tone but logic. I respect that something new was attempted, but that doesn't make me want to watch it as much as I watched the first 3 films. I haven't gone a year without seeing the first 3 Alien films since 1992, and I'm serious when I say that. However, I can go several years without seeing Alien Resurrection, and that is perhaps the most damning thing I could say about this film. Well, that wraps up another video. Next up is Jaws, and we thought we would take a moment to let all of you know some of the upcoming projects for the summer of 2024. In the next 3 or 4 months, we plan on covering Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Gremlins 2, Total Recall, and Predator. We may try to do Airplane or Stargate in there somewhere, but let's wait and see. So until our next video, we truly want to salute the performance of Sigourney Weaver as Ripley. We love that character in all 4 films, and we miss her.
This is Ripley, last survivor of the Nostromo. Signing off.
If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. Use Super Thanks. It helps.